So, herzlich willkommen zum Kinotalk. Toll, dass ihr alle da seid. Wir freuen uns wahnsinnig. Wir sind irre aufgeregt und stolz, dass wir wieder Sinners zu Gast haben und diesmal die Kamerafrau Autumn Durald Arkapaw. Sinners ist für 16 Oscars nominiert, was den Rekord schlägt, und umso stolzer sind wir, dass wir über den Film sprechen können. Wir haben jetzt eine Dreiviertelstunde für das Gespräch und danach habt ihr 15 Minuten, Zeit, auch eure Fragen zu stellen. Und ich freue mich sehr, dass wir Julia Daschner für das Gespräch gewinnen können. Julia ist im Vorstand der Sektion Kamera der Filmakademie und wird das Gespräch führen. Und wir danken sehr herzlich Warner für die Kooperation und dass sie es möglich gemacht haben, dass wir Autumn einladen durften. Viel Spaß euch. Bis nachher.
Thank you, Anne, for the introduction. Autumn Durald Arkapaw, you were born and raised in California. After studying art history in Los Angeles, you went to AFI Conservatory, a film school in the Hollywood Hills. You graduated there the cinematography program in 2009. Gaining experience in advertising and music videos, you shot your first feature, Palo Alto, in 2013. Since 2022, you got member of the ASC and continued your amazing career on acclaimed projects such as Loki, Mainstream, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and now Sinners, written and directed by Ryan Coogler. Autumn, you just come from London, where the film won 3 BAFTAs. You were nominated yourself for your stunning cinematography on that film, and you've written already now Oscar history, as you are the first DOP of color to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. No female DOP ever won an Oscar so far. Only 3 times they were nominated in that category, namely Rachel Morrison, Ari Wegner, and Mandy Walker. Congratulations for your incredible work. I'm very honored and highly excited to talk to you now.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro. Very sweet.
Sinners marked your second collaboration with Ryan Coogler. Just now he won the BAFTA for the Best Original Script. So my first question is, when he gave it to you first, what were your first thoughts on it regarding the visuality? And how did Ryan and you find the visual concept?
Yeah, I didn't know, because it was a very secretive script. I think maybe people have read in the trades. And so he sent it to me, and I read it the night before I started The Last Showgirl, which is a movie I did with Gia in Las Vegas. So I was in my room, my hotel room, and I knew that he was sending me something that he wrote, and it was personal, and that he wanted to shoot it on film, but that's all I knew. So I read it I read it the night before I started shooting that movie, because when he sends you something, I'm going to read it immediately. And I was very excited. And yeah, it was insane. I mean, I didn't know that I was being sent something like that. So as you can imagine, when I read it, my mind just, blew open. And I knew he wanted to shoot on film. So as I'm reading it, I'm thinking about that movie shot on 16 millimeter. And I have a connection to the South because my father was born in New Orleans. He's of Creole descent. And my grandparents live there. So I've been to New Orleans in the past. And we hadn't chosen New Orleans as a shoot location yet, but I knew that he was considering Mississippi as well. So I had a visual of that space in my head when I read it because of my heritage. But I think for me, it's just a very personal story, but also along with like big imagination, and has so many vivid images when you read it. So how I work is when
Do you
I
recall one of those images which came to your mind?
Yeah, it was like the script opens, I don't know if you know, but it opens with Jack O'Connell's jumping into frame. But that's not how he eventually opened the film. So for me, when I'm reading something like that, like I could see it in my head. I hadn't, I didn't know I was shooting it in IMAX yet. So, but it's very vivid, like image of like someone, jumping into frame, and that whole, it reads like a Western, like a very big scopy American Western. And so he decided to shoot that in IMAX later because we had a lot of dialogue, so the camera is not sync sound. So making that decision made it a beautiful scene. And then also it doesn't open the film anymore. As you know, the film opens with the church sequence. But yeah, we talked, I think after I finished that movie, we talked on the phone, and that's where I kind of figured out what it should look like. Because when he talks to me, that's my biggest inspiration is him and what it means to him. So I take notes. And he gave me a book of photographs by a woman named Eudora Welty. He said, look at this book of photographs as a reference. I really like it. And then after that, I kind of knew what he wanted.
What
It
were
made
the
sense.
photographs like? Because I wanted to ask you if
Yeah.
if there were references also for the time period, or how did
Yeah.
you approach the visual concept?
Yeah, that's the first. I think for me, it's always, talking to the director, because that's the person that I'm going to war with, right? The person that is going to tell me what their vision is and what it means to them. If I'm going to spend 6 to 12 months, standing next to them and fighting for things and making things feel and look like they envisioned when they wrote it. And so, that being one of the references, I love photography references. That's where I thrive. If I'm doing prep on any movie, I always have like a photography reference to start out. That's kind of where I started with photography, and it makes it more grounded, right? Because we're all playing make believe, like with movies. We're trying to make something that's not real feel and look real. And so why photography speaks to me is because those are real moments, usually social documentary photography.
Okay.
So Eudora Welty was a short story writer who wrote short stories, but also did photography. So she would go out into the rural landscape, and she would take these portraits and, very documentary perspective, but very humanistic portraits of what was happening around her. And they just felt really beautiful, and kind of put these people that were just working the land, picking cotton, and she put them up on a pedestal. They're very beautiful pictures. So that's kind of where I drew from.
Okay.
We haven't seen this type of person on this format before, looking that strong and powerful. So
Thank you for sharing this. I'm really curious to see those photographs.
the book, yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Yes.
called Photographs if you look it up.
Okay. So as you just mentioned it, Ryan and you both envisioned the story to be shot in 16 millimeter. But at the end, the shoot turned out to be large format 65 millimeter ultra vision and IMAX 65 millimeter 15 perf. So to say, the biggest format possible to be seen on the biggest screen possible. How did you come to these decisions regarding format and aspect ratio, and how does it relate to the story?
Yeah, he had envisioned it in 16. So like I mentioned, I did know that when I read it. And his idea, like the code name that he gave the film, was called Grilled Cheese. And what that meant is he knew there was a time frame that he wanted to make it, that all his friends would be available, and it would be like this down and dirty shoot, kind of gritty shoot, where we would grab the camera, put on our shoulder, and run around. And
You bought a
like
camera for that, right?
Yeah.
416.
Yes. And he used, he shot Fruitvale Station on 16 and really enjoyed that. So, a grilled cheese can be made, it tastes really good. It can be made quickly. So that was the thought process. And then what happened is our original VFX supervisor had suggested that we shoot 35 because of the gate weave that you can get with 16, which makes it harder to composite and do twinning work. So then we explored 35, and then someone from the studio called Ryan and said, have you guys thought about large format? So if you're shooting film, large format only means, 65, whether that's 5 perf or 15 perf. So after that, he called me immediately, and he said, he's like, look, what do you think? Like, let's talk about it. And then he mentioned Hateful Eight, because he was interested in that really wide landscape and how that would beautifully tell the story. So after that, I made a phone call to Andrew Oren at Photochem, and I said, look, Ryan's going to be in town for a day. Show me everything you have on 70.
The rushes,
That
the film.
exactly, that we could look at. So he put together a little menu so we could really, sit in a space and look at what that looked like. So shot on 65, projected in 70, and it was rushes, some stuff from Hateful Eight, like Robert Richardson's lens tests. We looked at some 2001 Space Odyssey, which is not Ultra Panavision 70, it's Super Panavision, which is a 2:20 aspect ratio. We looked at some of that. We looked at some of Tenet. We also looked at a little licorice pizza, which is shot 35, but Paul did a blow up for 70. And we sat there and we looked at it all, and everyone fell in love, and Ryan jumped out of his seat and he said, "This is what I've been missing." He walked up to the screen because, watching a film print is one of the most beautiful experiences I can have as a cinematographer, I feel like. And after that, we went and did a test out in the desert. And I got a bunch of gear, and I called IMAX, and we looked at IMAX. And we shot IMAX 35 and Ultra Panavision. And I found a really pretty model that I put in the frame, had beautiful structure. And then we watched those prints at the 70 room in Photochem, and then we went to IMAX headquarters and watched the IMAX 14370 print of our test. And after that, you can't unsee that stuff. So we weren't gonna go backwards. So
And how did the production react? I mean, they were kind of suggesting you to consider large format. They
Yeah.
pushed you into that, so they
Yeah.
had to now to cope with
Yeah.
that upcoming idea that you really went for IMAX or Ultravision and IMAX.
Yeah.
And were there restrictions for financial reasons, or how did come the decision that you shoot not the entire film on IMAX, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, it's if everything could just be focused on the creative and the money would just flow in to support that, it would be a beautiful world, wouldn't it? But that's not how it works, right? Obviously, there's always a discussion around like what's best for the story, what the filmmakers want, and then what that means financially on a piece of paper. So I think, Ryan's also a producer on the film, and our producers, Zinzi, his partner, his wife, and also a producer, and Sev, like after making the decision that that's the biggest creative decision, that's going to showcase the film and be the best format for the film, which we felt. We watched both of those formats together to see how they would work, editorial, because no one's ever put them together before. And they felt really elegant and they felt right. So, Ryan's very brave. So he's going to go and he's going to explain that, right? They're all going to have discussions with the studio, and then ultimately the studio is going to back that idea and support it because it requires a much different process logistically and financially. So then they go and do that, right? And then I have to
I
support it
just
with.
wanted to ask, what was the content-wise, what story-wise? So how did
Yes.
you decide on which scenes to shoot in, to go for IMAX and which scenes to go for the wide Ultra Panavision?
Yeah, well, the decision to shoot the two formats comes first, right? Because we have to not only like there aren't that many cameras that even exist to shoot Ultra Panavision 70. I think there's like 4. So you gotta make sure that logistically you have that gear, and then you decide first to just shoot the movie with those two formats, even before you're looking at the script and deciding which goes with which, right? It's just we're gonna tell the story with these two formats, because the thing is when you decide to shoot IMAX, it becomes a different distribution. So in making a decision to combine them together, you're saying now I have an IMAX picture release, right? And on paper, that means how much of the film are you going to shoot on IMAX to make it be able to be in IMAX theaters? So say that's 20 minutes. And so you make that decision, like we're going to make sure that there's enough footage in the film that's IMAX because we want someone that's going to buy that ticket to be satisfied and have a good experience. So there's all of that goes on too that, requires thoughtfulness, and Ryan's very great at that. And then we make a decision. We sit down, we go through the script, every scene, and we say, well, it's not a sync sound camera, so you can't, you're going to not earmark heavy dialogue scenes for IMAX. So everything that's like the musical oneer and then landscape stuff or any musical sequence, we can shoot IMAX. So we note that. And then, most of the movie is being shot in the 276. And then later, and this is beyond that, Ryan decides to turn scenes that are heavy dialogue into IMAX, which is, a decision he's made. We made some of those decisions a few days before for the farmhouse sequence with Jack jumping into
So they
frame.
were recorded like ADR later on, or yeah.
Exactly. But it's a big decision to make because, as an actor, you have a camera that's as loud as a lawnmower 2 to 3 feet from your face. And, this is being projected on 100-foot screen in Lincoln Square on an 80 millimeter close-up on, 15 perf IMAX. So the performances, Ryan is having these conversations with the actors to make sure that they're down for the cause, and they were, obviously, and they did a beautiful job of that. And then later, because you're shooting a guide track as well, so later then they have to redo it and do ADR. But those scenes are better for him choosing to switch that, because they're my favorite scenes are those 2 scenes, and they're my favorite, I think, because they're in IMAX.
Okay, thank you. The lenses we choose have to serve a lot of things in our way to tell a story. So which lenses did you choose, and how did you work with different focal length, especially on IMAX format? You restricted yourself to two focal length.
Yeah, I'm a big lens nerd for sure. If you look at anything when I do these conversations, and I've been working with Panavision my whole career, pretty much like 90% of the time. Throughout anything that I do, I'm shooting with their glass. So I've developed a relationship with them, and I shot with the Ultra Panatars, but not on 65 millimeter before. So I'm familiar with that glass. My husband also shot with that glass on The King, which is a movie, but that was a digital movie shot on that Arri 65, and they cropped the sides. So yes, they're beautiful lenses, but it was beautiful to use them in their true format, with the 65 5 perf. And I also, in working with Dan, I'm a big, I have a big appreciation for fall off, field curvature, the way the lens performs in, as far as what color the flares are and the bokeh shape and all this nerdy stuff. So Dan and I have been working together for a while.
And
So we
you would
we
shoot
talked
them
about
wide open, or how?
Yes. Yeah, I shoot those lenses for me perform their best at wide open. So, in doing that, obviously you have to have a great focus puller. But every lens is different, right? So what I also love about certain vintage glasses, it's not all matched, right? Every focal has its own character, and I'll gravitate.
Mhm.
Yes. I'll gravitate towards a certain focal. So we had 2 sets of the Ultra Panatars for our 65/5 package, and then I chose the IMAX Panavision lenses that he made for Hoyton and Christopher Nolan on Oppenheimer, which is a 50 mil and an 80 mil. And in choosing those, I'm going to Ryan and I'm saying, I feel this is the right glass. Also, because I have to create a cohesive look, so I want to make sure they're not the same formats and they're not the same lenses, but you want them to feel of the same space. So I felt those were good to match with the Panatars, because there were other glass available, not Panavision glass, but other glass. And Ryan thought that it was good to tell our story. He thought it would be okay to have those 2 focals. And then I asked Dan to make an 80 mil Petzval lens that we could use, which we used for some sequences.
And see some in the ends, right?
Yeah, the end sequence, and then we use that lookup table as well to put on other scenes that that weren't shot with the Petzval, but we use that look. So VFX put it after the fact on the oneer, the musical oneer. Because if you see the musical oneer, the 50, it's with a 50 mil, but it does have that characteristic. So
Yeah, we will shortly come to that scene.
yes.
But before, I wanted to ask you still about the parts of your visual concept regarding the camera movement.
Yes.
What did you have in mind first, and how did the decision of Ryan to cast Michael B. Jordan for both of the twin brothers affected the movement of the camera?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question to answer because it has so many layers. I mean, to start, I think with Ryan, he got advice from Christopher Nolan. He said it, in a few interviews where his advice was treat it like a Super 8 camera. We all know how small a Super 8 camera is and how big these camera systems are. So what he meant by that was like, don't
Just for
feel
our audience, it's I think it's around 65 pounds or something, it's like more
Yeah.
than 30 kilos.
The IMAX is 65, and then the system 65 is 100 pounds. So that's something that we kept on a dolly and on a crane. But so with that advice, it means like don't feel encumbered by what it looks like. Make your film as you would. And I also spoke with Hoyte in prep, and his encouragement was similar. It was like, just shoot it as you would normally shoot it, which is great advice, because what that means is like it's just another tool to tell your story, and essentially you're giving respect to that tool. It weighs more, it's bigger logistically, it's completely different. Your camera team has to do everything completely different. But if you guys do that and you give that respect, you will get the most beautiful images you have ever seen in your entire life. So you do that, for that system. And so as far as movement, like Ryan and I love to move the camera around. Ryan likes to do oneers. He likes Steadicam. He likes things to feel lyrical, and he's very creative like that. So, for him, if he's coming to me and he's saying, I want to do this oneer in a space, and we're gonna think about stitch points, or there's a grocery store oneer where the camera at the grocery store scene, takes her from one side of the street to the other. Like that's a very difficult shot because there was dialogue, and he wanted to do that in a one shot and then have her come back into the store and continue on talking with Michael. And I think they ended up cutting out of it, but I had to logistically solve that problem with dialogue, which meant, I mean, there's all this like stuff that we had to do. We made a rickshaw rig to put the system camera on it on a remote head and create ramps, but then we couldn't turn the rig around in the store. So then we ended up shooting it on a high speed body that's lighter. But then if it's high speed, it means the dialogue is, it's not synced down. So all these things happen. So yeah, I don't want him to feel encumbered when he suggests stuff to me. I want to solve it for him with my crew and be able to give, the shot what it needs. And then the twinning of it all is very complex because, as like if you're doing simple twinning, we can do it on a lock off, and we can shoot the A side, and then the actor goes and changes, he comes back, and you shoot a B side. That would be, the easiest. But when you start wanting to move the camera around, it becomes much more complex. We used a techno dolly as our main tool. It was something that Michael Ralla, who's German, is my VFX supervisor, who I work very closely with, and he I met on Wakanda. He was our second unit VFX supervisor, so he's someone that I know really well, and we're friends outside of work. And so he thought that would be a great tool to have, but you have to, logistically, it's expensive to carry a techno dolly for your whole shoot.
Of course.
But we used it a lot. And then after that, if they're starting to touch each other a lot in scenes and fight each other, then that becomes head replacement. So it's a bunch of stuff that you have to go over and prep and really dial in with your team and figure it out. And then on the day, it's very tedious. It's very tedious.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the collaboration with the art department and costumes in the pre-production and during the shoot. How was the process of the world building with production designer Hannah Beechler and costume designer Ruth Carter in terms of color, structures, surfaces, and look and feel?
Yeah, I mean, we're a family. I did the picture with them before. That movie lasted a year long. And I don't think that there will be a bigger movie, for me at least, that I'll do than that movie, because that movie had so much breath and had a lot of underwater elements. So, there was a lot of stuff that we did on that shoot, and we really got to know each other. So it's like collaboration at the highest level. And these are women that are very inspiring, that are, to me as, a woman of color, but just as a woman making big films, you know, um, with Ryan, it's pretty cool, to work with them. And so, and I really love them. So, when it comes to something like this, it's more personal, and we've had that experience together on that big film. I want to make sure that all of that research that they're doing and all that homework, because that's the kind of women that they are. They want to make sure that the world is really built out, and it's based on history, and it's based off of like just so much thought goes into those costumes and the production design.
Yeah, I assume, yeah, and I think even more like when they will know that you plan to shoot in IMAX, then you really for them it's also a big change in their work because they, like it's not forgiving. It's you can just see every detail regarding patina, and so I think this affected their work also a lot. And did you start early in the process to share your thoughts?
Yeah. No, we have like what's great with working with Ryan is, as you know, as DP, sometimes you're not on the ground when the director starts and the designer starts. But with Ryan, I'm there the moment he's on the ground, which is great because there's so many decisions that need to be made with the DP and with the designer, when they're scouting something and they're choosing a location, I'm always going to want to orientate it in a certain way to have the best backlight or use the sun for myself, use the sun as much as possible. And, because Hannah's building these structures from scratch, I have a say in that.
For example, this scene at the you shot in the magic hour, and I think it's Hannah was building that farmhouse of the Clans couple.
Yes.
And Remick, the head of the vampires, arrives there. And so you made that farmhouse be orientated in the right way for the sunset. And
Yeah.
how did you manage to shoot that scene? Like, because normally we say like in blue hour or magic hour, right after sunset, we have half an hour for shooting. And
Yeah. No, the format itself, I think we all had a conversation about, what you were saying before. And Ryan was like, don't think that they're always going to do their best job, whether it's a digital picture or a film picture or IMAX. So we were trying to not adjust things because we were shooting IMAX. Like Hannah was going to build her set the normal way she would build it. She wasn't going to build it differently because of that. I mean, we had conversations about, field of view and like, if I'm shooting this scene in IMAX, am I going to see these rafters? Like, I'm doing some math to let her know this is my field of view. So think about that when you're building it, but also build it the way in which you, would and want to. And that was just a note because you don't want, everyone to like freak out now that we're shooting IMAX and, but people are going to see it on a bigger screen and you educate yourself on that format. But with the farmhouse, it's something that is so important in Ryan's script, the horizon. So she's looking for locations that we can see the horizon come and go, and that there are, the farmhouse is in a place where they are sharecroppers, so it has to have land around it for miles and miles. You have horses that need to come up. So it's all like, it's very specific on the page. So that just takes a lot of work from the locations department and Hannah trying to find this. And that's not easy, right? So we're scouting a lot of locations and going to far places to find this. So when we finally found it, and that was a great location, I'm orientating it in a certain way that gives us the best light, but then also allows us to shoot a direction and then turn around and have a good direction, but also for lighting, hoping that that day it's not cloudy and that I actually have a sunset, which I did. So I got very lucky because, as you know, like I could have gone there and it could have rained all day and could have been cloudy and I might have had to deal with that. But luckily I didn't. We shot there for 2 days.
you were lucky to shoot it in 2 days. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it was planned for 1 day, but we didn't complete. So we had to go back there and do more. And when we went back, it was sunny. So, and you know how it is. I mean, a shot is only as beautiful as Mother Nature is going to give you. So, for this film, it needed blue skies because you do want to see all of that, horizon, and you want to see the blue hour, and you don't want it contaminated so much with the clouds. So I got very lucky. But to answer your question about blue hour, and we all know you can't shoot that whole scene in 10 minutes. So what it means is I have to organize it with AD and, Ryan and my lighting department, because I'm having to shoot some scenes at the wrong time, make them look like the blue hour. Then some scenes are actually getting shot in blue hour. Then VFX has that library of looks, right? Where we discuss on how to alter that in
So
order
you
to
shoot the plates like on location in the real hour, and this can be like sky replacement or.
Well, so I'm not shooting plates necessarily. So I'm
okay.
shooting everything in camera. He is doing his own panoramics, and he's doing his own references. Like the VFX team is shooting those panels to get the references of skies. And on the day, some shots have sky replacement, so that's just being built out in post to replace that sky. However, I am shooting some references in camera in the right moment in time. Like for instance, there's a shot of the Choctaw looking, there's a guy on a horse and he's looking at the sun setting. That's a real shot, right? So then now he has a shot as a reference of the real sky on the format that he can look back to when he's replacing the sky for when Jack is at the door and looking back. And I shot that, say, at 1 o'clock when it needs to look like 5 o'clock, but he has a reference for 5 o'clock. Stuff like that. And I had B camera go and shoot a couple of sunsets as well. So he has those references. But yeah, it's a dance that we play, me and Michael, at the end in post, where he shows me some of the options for sky replacement, and I give notes on color temperature and cloud placement. And then, it's all a conversation, and sometimes, it feels right or it doesn't. But I want to make sure that the whole scene has a cohesive look, that it doesn't feel like it's being replaced, essentially.
Yeah, it turned out very beautiful, I think. Yeah. What vision did you have for lighting the film, and how did you create the atmospheres in such big locations also?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's rooted in this reality, right? I mean, there's these surrealistic moments where you have a choice where you can play more. But I think for me, the film at its core, again, with the photography reference, like, you want to feel like you're actually in the 30s, and it feels like an old photograph. So I'm always going to draw from the resources that were actually there. So if I'm shooting night exterior, the biggest source is the moon. And Ryan was great because he wanted to show a little scene where they tapped into the electricity that night, which allowed us to have some, practicals, which helped, but they weren't, as you know, in the night exterior, it's like the biggest source is the moon. And you see some practicals because we have some, Edison bulbs and stuff that are being mounted that Hannah gave me on the outside of the juke, the lumber mill. And then I have a couple that are on poles outside, but they're not like motivating sources. They're just there to balance the eye, for light, for texture. So I'm lighting it mostly with like a big 40 by 40 softbox that's on a construction crane. And then we have a bunch of different machines that are across the river. And we have lights on condors, kissing and lighting the trees. And my gaffer and I have been working together for over 10 years, Brian Bartolini. And so, night exterior is very important to us. But what it means to us is like rigging. It's a big rigging crew. And it's a lot of pre-planning that allows us to have all of those layers of texture, because it's not just like we get there on the night and we light it. We have to plan.
I suppose also like in the like in the juke joint, when coming to the scene, I want to talk with you about also the Warner, the Ryan and Autumn Warner, let's say. I think you needed 360 degrees of viewing angle. There could not be some stands or something. So there were soft lights from above, but as strong that you could hit 500 ASA, or
Yeah. No, so we do a lot of that in prep, right? So I'm kind of like, and also with my key grip, it's, in prep, I want to make sure that the space feels real, but it's also a full space. Like, I love ceilings. Like, I don't want to shoot a set that doesn't have a ceiling and then I'm, using, like a big soft box above, and then VFX is now creating a ceiling in post and rotoing someone's head, because I like to shoot lower, I want there to be a real space. But what that means is it's going to put more restrictions on lighting if it's a real space, because I have to rig within a real structure. But I always feel like it's better for the movie, because then the actor is now walking onto a real space. There's not a bunch of stuff on the ground lighting them. It comes from the top, which it normally would in that space. So yeah, it's a discussion, and in hair and makeup, I'm kind of introducing what that looks like with my team. So I did a lot with my gaffer, like suggested we use, because we were doing all these tests of like what sources to use. And so we looked at gem balls. So we ended up using gem balls a lot in the film and double diffusing them with muslin. And so what we would do is we would rig those in certain spaces that we knew that would be appropriate for blocking, and then, adjust them for the key light, but it was always from above. And so, you got to be quick also with that. So if I'm shooting a scene in the corner over here, then I'm, adjusting that for the close up, and then I'm moving. So all these gem balls are being moved around constantly, like 19-inch. And then we have them on variacs so we can dim them appropriately. And I don't mind when a source gets warmer because I like that warmth. And then we also had
I
a
think
bunch.
this was also part of the color concept, right?
Yes,
To have
exactly.
this like kind of more bluish night exterior outside shots, and inside the playful location it should be more warm and
Yeah, I like that feeling.
welcoming.
And there's all this wood too. And I think with Hannah, I'm working with her a lot to kind of make sure that what she is building incorporates these practicals, because we had a lot of lanterns. So I was using a combination of the lanterns and that, I would, on a blueprint, we would sit there, Hannah and I would show her the spots that I would need those things. And then she built a second story of the lumber mill. If you see in some of the shots, you can see. And so when I wasn't seeing the second story, we used that lighting and grip, we had a bunch of T12s up there bouncing into some muslin rags that we kind of rigged that we could peel off and on, so that when I did have to see up there, the muslin could be peeled back. And so that's creating an overall ambient bounce for the 500 ASA that we need to kind of, because it's not, as it's like, it's 500 and I'm shooting it, I'm underexposing it, but also the key light's not enough. I need an overall ambience to be able to fill in the shadows and create that texture. So, and then, yeah, with the oneer, you have to plan, because you don't want the oneer to happen and then all of a sudden the lighting changes. However, I need to figure out how to make it look the same as it did before, but now I'm seeing 360. So
Yeah.
it's just,
So the Warner is a really like talking the last minutes about this scene. It's a really stunning scene. I think that's also the reason why you find a lot on the internet about it, and why your team talked a lot about it already. So it starts on the face of Sammy playing the blues guitar, and you start in the wide aspect ratio of 2:7:6, and then it opens all up to the towering format of 1:4:3, and then I think the journey starts. So how did you develop this scene with Ryan? How did you choreograph it? Who was the one who like draw the first movements on a plan, and did the dance choreography follow this, or did you look at the dance choreography and then you did the camera work, the planning the movement?
yeah. I mean, it's all on the page first. So, it was a very dense paragraph that he wrote beautifully, and it was like big imagination type of shot. So we're all, we all sit down and we talk to him about what it means. He has some storyboards roughly to kind of look at as a reference. And then it becomes, just a logistics thing where we have to really figure out how to make it, work for the space. And all the departments are involved, because it's one of those type of shots where it has to be like that. It's like, it's very collaborative shot, because as you mentioned, choreography, music, camera and lighting, what device are we putting the camera on? So we knew it would be IMAX because, it's a musical sequence. But at first it was like, are we putting it on a crane? Are we putting it on the Steadicam? But by putting it on the Steadicam, you're restricted, because the mag, 1,000-foot load, it can only be 2.5 minutes. And that's too heavy to put on a Steadicam. So you have to
put off film stock out of the cans, right?
Yes. So we downspooled it. So you got 75 seconds to do that. So by choosing it to be Steadicam and doing it that way, so we have that. So that's your first restriction, right? So when you're going to talk about it first, you're going to say, okay, so if it's going to be Steadicam, so it can flow through the space, and Ryan wanted it to be one shot, we have 75 seconds. So where we started was, it's a shot that you would put into previs so that everyone can kind of look at something first and then comment on it and get everyone on the page of like, what are we seeing? What does this look like? So we had a meeting, and I remember Michael Ralla, VFX supervisor, he had a blueprint of Hannah's set. And so he said, Autumn, can you just draw something to start? Like, what do you think? Like a path, so that I can ingest that into the previs software, Unreal Engine, and we can look at it, and then it's something to show Ryan, to put music on, to kind of figure out where the dancers could be. So you kind of start somewhere, right? Just to like put in the system and create image. And so I did that, and I was just thinking about it as far as flow, because with the blueprint, I know what the restrictions are, because there's beams places. I know there's a stage, so I'm kind of thinking about, well, if I am a Steadicam camera and there's a stage, there's going to need to be a ramp. Does the ramp come in? Does it come out? So you have all these things in your head, but that's where we started. And then Ryan takes a look at it and adjusts it from there, and then works with the choreography, and then also with sound and Ludwig. And then it becomes a thing where you're rehearsing on the weekend to look at it with the actual dancers, and
And
that's
even there was kind of live music, right? I mean, Ludwig composed the
yes,
song, and but
exactly.
the actors were also contributing with live music.
Yes. Yeah, I heard, like, because we did with Raphael Sadiq, we did a Q&A recently, and I didn't know this, because there's a lot of stuff that, this is a big movie that has a lot of parts moving, and sometimes I'm doing these Q&As and I'm learning about the movie that I shot. So then Raphael was saying that I think on the set, it wasn't timing out exactly, and then so Raphael and Ludwig were talking, and Ludwig said like, oh, I'll just change the song, I'll adjust, because they made the song. And so it's because Ludwig is the producer, but also Ryan's best friend, and he's there also with our music producer, Serena, and they're there every day on set. So it's very collaborative, and it allows for that adjustment and to make it work, right? To make the shot beautiful. And
I think therefore it's also so stunning,
so that's
because
very
you
nice,
really
right?
feel the authenticity, like it's
Exactly.
it's really real what you see
Exactly.
on the dancer's face. They react to the real music, so the camera can capture this. So and also because of the time that it's a one at least for the for
Yes.
70 seconds or something until the first invisible cut comes.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
3 parts. So it's 3 Steadicam shots stitched together in the space. And then it tips up into the burning roof, which we shot on the last day. We shot a plate of the actual roof burning. So VFX does a takeover there, and then seams it with a different shoot that's on a night exterior day, different day, because the interior is shot in one day, and then the night exterior was a different day later in the shoot. And that's on 100 feet of track that pulls back on a 50-foot movie bird crane.
Until
So
the vampires come in the foreground.
exactly. And so it pulls back. And so that's part of the shot as well. So I think it's 5 shots total. Yes, 5 that make up that one shot. And yeah, and then focus pulling, like with the Steadicam. I mean, Ryan's working with my focus puller, Ethan, because you have people coming in and out of frame, and you want that timing to be right. It's a very hard focus pulling job. And so yeah, it's really super collaborative. But that's how Ryan is. He's like that. He loves those type of shots where it's like everybody's on deck and doing high level work and making it work, and he gets very excited by that.
Yeah. For me, it really had a strong impact after the 45 minutes of involving the story and the period and the characters. Then there comes the scene, and I realized that now comes a different story, or now the story reaches a different level. Yeah. Autumn, we are almost done with time, but I still have some questions. Of course, I have many, but I don't know, as we are allowed to continue a little bit more, at least one question, perhaps.
One more 5 minutes.
Okay. I just have to choose a question now. So just let me just quick.
I'll try to combo an answer for you, so you get 2 for 1.
Yeah, I want to look a little bit back on your career, since you. What helped you most in being seen and getting the chance to work on such outstanding projects?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try and answer this different, because I've been asked, I've been doing a lot of this stuff, so I'm trying to think of something a little different that will help. I think one thing, I mean, I always talk about how important it is to find your community. And what that means is, a group of people that you feel comfortable with, that see you, that you align with, taste and vision, the way you like to work on set. And it's so important because I think early on I went to film school, I went to AFI, then I met Gia, and that's how we made films. We grabbed our friends and we ran around with the camera. We shot stuff that we thought looked beautiful. We were in full control of what we were doing. Um, I mean, it's funny that that poster is behind me because the office has the best light. So, and my husband's out there, so I always do these talks in here. But it was that type of film where, and so it feels like you. It feels like the people who made it. And so when you put it out into the world, and the response that you get is like, it's very personal because people can feel your point of view and your voice. And I think early on, I felt like I always wanted to make films like that, like finding the right people that I could tell these stories with. So I was very lucky on Loki because that being my first big opportunity that I said yes to, that I found someone in Kate Herron who believed in my point of view, and we were able to kind of take big swings, and we had budget, and we were creating a new world. The designer, as well as a good friend till this day, and he also was like, taking big swings, and we fought for ceilings, and we had that support. And so I think it's like you want to be brave, and you want to, like, when you're given an opportunity to say something, like personally say something as a filmmaker or as a DP, you want to take a big swing, and you want to believe in it, and you want to surround yourself with people that trust you. And so I think Loki was successful because we all were on the same page, and we were able to do that. And then meeting Ryan was similar in that sense, where I was able to be included in a group of people that I got along with, and that trusted me and allowed me to be a leader, allowed me to take big swings. And so I've been fortunate, to do that. And I think it's about finding that group. I truly believe that. And not to say I haven't had experiences where I've done other films, because I've done many other films, and they've been great. I love Teen Spirit that I did with Max Minghella. I felt like I had that as well with Max. So I try to pick well. I try to pick well because I think it's important. It's not just a job, at least for me.
Thank you so much. I think we open up now for questions from the audience.
So Caroline asks, how much do you stick to a shot list while shooting? And would you say that developing your own style, handwriting, as a cinematographer influences the breakdown of a script?
I'll answer the first one. The shot list is something I think Ryan and I did it a lot on Wakanda, and that was, that's a huge movie that takes a very long time. We have a big prep. And so I think I remember him saying that he wanted to make sure that on that film, because I'm not sure if he got to do as much of it on the first one, he wanted to shot list everything. And, I think what it means really is like, it's not like you're making at least for us, it's not like we're making the film in prep and that's exactly what we're going to do. And then we go to shoot it and we do everything, that we did in, prep. It's a way to just like start talking about something and discuss, because we're doing a lot of complex sequences, so we need to logistically like kind of figure things out with many departments and give an idea to somebody. And Ryan enjoys having like a structure and going over that stuff with me. Also, we do it with the AD, so it's Ryan and I and the AD, and then we sit in the room, and sometimes the storyboard artist is there, and we talk to them. And it's a nice place to just kind of figure out what we think it is, before we've even stepped foot in the structure. But for me, I feel like when it becomes alive and when I really figure out the language is when, Hannah and I are talking about the space, and then Ryan, Hannah, and I stand in the space if it's built already, right? And we're doing blocking and we're discussing blocking. That's where I kind of figure it out, that comes from here, because I need to be in the space. I need to light it. I need to see a rehearsal with Michael walking around, with Wumi walking around. That's where it becomes like soulful. And so it doesn't mean you can't change that, because a lot of the shots in the film, are very cool shots that are storyboarded that we knew we wanted to do so we can execute them on the day. But a lot of it is, figuring out, when we're on the land and looking at the sun or, stuff like that. So we change it if we need to, but some of them are logistical challenges, like the one that, when it crosses the street, or the musical sequence, like, so we need to prepare beforehand. So that's important. And then, like I said before, it's like you have to find people that you have similar taste in how you like to move a camera, and how they like to make films. And I've obviously found that someone in Ryan. And so, when he's suggesting stuff, or when I'm suggesting stuff, it's a conversation, but it's always rooted in emotion. That's really big for him. So I know when, because I operate a camera, like I know when something feels right or doesn't feel right. So that's huge for me, is to be with him operating the camera right there. He's right next to me. And if we say if it's handheld, it doesn't feel right, we fix it, we change it. But it's all about the actors in the space, because they drive so much of that emotion, in rehearsal. And you have to keep your eyes open and pay attention. And I watch him when he's doing his rehearsals with his cast. So, they come to set in the morning or something like that. They walk around, they talk about it. And I watch all of that. And then they go away. Ryan and I have a conversation about it. And then, I work with my team to light it, and then they come back.
I was wondering how much of the shots, or like from the pictures that he has in his head, how much do you influence them? Like, or does he already have like a very, very strong point of view, and then you just try to implement it like very technically, or like how much of the creative composition do you take part in? Yeah, that would be very nice to know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. It's a very collaborative. I mean, at least in the filmmakers that I'm choosing to collaborate with, they're asking me to come break bread with them, because they think that I'm the right person to tell that story, right? So that's what I meant by finding the right people, because the last thing you want as a filmmaker or a DP is to be asked to come to the table and then be restricted and not being allowed to participate, or that your ideas, or that your history, all the stuff that you come with, it can be utilized. And Ryan is someone that appreciates that, and asks certain people to come to the table in order to express themselves and pour themselves into it. So, and that's how he works with everybody, how he works with Ruth and Hannah, and he trusts us. And so, you know, you have that say, you have that authority to contribute, and he listens. And it's all at the root of, like I said before, like early on, it's, he's my biggest inspiration, because that's the person that's coming to ask me, like, come with me for 6 to 12 months, leave your family, come tell this story with me. I want this person to protect my time, to protect my sanity. And it's important, right, that that person is, that I respect them, and that they're kind, and he is that. So yeah, I mean, it's always a discussion, and at the root of it is, what's on the page, because I think when you have a really great script, that's what you want, right? Because it's all there, right? So, after the fact, and you're figuring out how it should look, and you're working with your whole team, um, but at the root of it, it needs to be grounded in something that's like real and strong and beautiful. And luckily, he writes really good scripts, so I already have a great blueprint, to roll off of. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
We have one question in the chat from Benita. So first, she thanks you for sharing your wisdom. And also, Benita asks, you are the first Filipina and the first woman of color nominated for an Oscar in cinematography. How much does representation mean to you? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, of course. I mean, honestly, that's why I like to do these talks. Because I think, I mean, if you see, like, what I was saying before, or I'm mixing different different talks I've done today, but I don't know, did I talk about how when I was first looking for a DP and I couldn't find very many female names? Did I talk about that? Okay, so when I was in college and I decided, I was like, I want to do this as a career, I started looking up the names of the movies that I appreciated, and I couldn't find a woman's name. And then finally, I looked up the movie Blow, and I found Ellen Kuros's name, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I saw her name, I was like, yes, there's a woman doing this. This is fantastic. That means I can do it. And what that means, fast forward, what that means for me today is that, like, it's as simple as that, right? I think for us, if you're looking at a career where, you can't find someone that looks like you, it can be discouraging doing the job. You can't find someone, and most of the people doing it are the opposite of you. Um, so I needed to find that name in order to get where I am today. It's huge. And so I think for me, I've had so many girls come up to me, and I've been able to travel a little bit with this awards conversation. And, they come up to me and they tell me, they're like, I saw your talk, or, I read something that you wrote, and it really inspired me to keep doing what I'm doing, but also know that I mean something in the space, that my voice and what I'm doing means something. So I find that, like, that's really why I do this, and Ryan is someone who's also like that, right? So he fights for us, he fights for our stories, he fights, he has women in high levels in positions in his department heads. So when I'm on his set and I'm looking around, I see people that look like me. So that means that I can, like, be myself. And so I encourage people to do that. And so I think for us, this first, it's a first, but it's also hopefully, like, it shows people that they can also do this. And I think that I didn't have that as much growing up in 2007, I guess. So we've come, it's better now. We still have a lot of work, right? Because I think I'm just the fourth to be nominated. But I talk to my husband about this a lot too. It's also about opportunity, because it doesn't mean that us girls aren't out there. There's so many girls out there, and I'm sure on this call, that work in camera, that want to be DPs. But we have to also create those opportunities for them, and open those doors for them. And so Ryan does that. So I've been very fortunate. So it takes work for sure. But I try to shout from the rooftops about it. So we'll see.
Autumn, let me just quickly, because we mentioned it before, for me it's a quite, a lot of people in film industry, also in the cinematography sector, apparently have family, they have children to care about, they have parents to care about. So how can we stay open-minded and hearted people? How can we care about our family and still work in the film industry? How did you deal with it? Could your son visit you on set? Did you have some days off to visit the family, or what do you think about that? How should the industry change to make this more compatible with our lives?
Yeah. No, I think that question's it's an important question, but I think what you said at the end, how can we change? That's good that you said that. Because I think, first of all, my husband's a DP, and he works on big pictures as well, and he's very talented and he loves what he does. So just in general, in a relationship, to choose someone like that to have a family with, you're creating a difficult situation right off the top. But obviously when you love someone, you can't choose all of that. And when we met, we knew we wanted to have a family. So it was difficult at first. And I think Adam, when I met him, he had a prolific career already. I knew that he shot True Detective, and that he had shot Macbeth and beautiful, beautiful films. So I was a little bit behind in that, because I was still doing smaller indies that didn't have as much, distribution. And so he was very inspiring to me. And then we decided to have our son. So I took a year off, and we were in England, and he was shooting Assassin's Creed. And so I moved to England, and I took time off, and I had our son. And it was after that we moved back to the States. I said, I really want to get back to work. And I remember having a talk with Rachel Morrison, because the time at which we have children, and say we're 35, is the same time you really want to grow your career as a woman as well. And they don't match up at all. And you know how it is. You take a year off, and then someone forgets, and then you have to jump back in. So there's all these things as a woman, I think, just having the child, that you have to consider. But if you really love what you do and you're determined to do it, you don't want to let that go. And I think you can exist in both spaces. You can't have everything at once. That's one thing you have to understand. But you have to have a solve just right. Have to have a solve for how you're going to care for the child. And our solve was, my mom and my stepdad came and they moved to Los Angeles when I decided to take Loki. And so whether that's, I wasn't raised with nannies, but whether that's a nanny or if you can invite someone, a family member to help support you, that makes all the difference in the world. And so my mom and my stepdad have been crucial in being able to support us so that we can say yes to projects. And also working with people that respect you as a mother is important because Ryan's such a family man. He brings his family, his wife is his producer. And so you have a sense of that this man considers you also a mother. So if I go to him, which I did on Wakanda, and I say, I want to fly home on this Friday, I might miss half the day, but my crew can cover me and my operator can cover me. I want to fly home to take my child to preschool. And he looks back at you and he says, of course you can do that because you're a mother, I think that's really important. So choosing people to work with that also understand that we're not robots. And also just being able to have a supportive partner, because Adam and I's projects, the ones we want to do, aren't always on the same schedule. So I try to just tell women and men, that just try and make it work. However that looks, I don't know. But you can do both. You can do both. It's not
And now
easy though.
Yes, and now your son is as old that you can take him perhaps to the
Yes.
surfing. That's great.
Yeah, he's 10. Like for instance, on Sinners, they visited me a few times because, I was there for spring break and summer. And then it puts more pressure. I'm going to tell you that. It puts more pressure on, flying back and forth on the whole family. But that's how you solve it, right? You just everyone has to do more in order to make it work. Obviously, if you're a sole single person and you have no family, it's easy to fly all over the world and it doesn't matter.
Thank you so much for sharing also this personal stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much for having you. Und danke an alle Mitglieder, dass ihr da wart und vor allen Dingen vielen, vielen Dank für diese exzellenten Fragen.
Gerne. Autumn, we keep
Yes.
all fingers crossed for you
Yes.
for the 15th.
I like all the emojis. It's so cute. Yeah.
We wish you all the best and thanks a lot that you
Oh, thank
you
you.
did this interview with me.
Yes. No, I have some friends in Germany now, so thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Feel welcomed all the time.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
See you.
Gute Nacht euch allen.